Today we are going to go over our Pracky using me as your guide for the video. So to start off, for 1 and 2, they want you to solve the equation from the word. So number 1 is 3 times Jeff's age plus 3 is Myrica's age. Myrica is 48. What is Jeff's age? When I'm looking at this, I kind of just say it out loud. So the is a good indicator for an equal sign. So that's what we know. We know Myrica is 48. But we don't know Jeff's age, so that's going to be our variable. So it says 3 times, so 3 times that's in our variable, x, plus 3 equals 48. And then when you solve this, you're going to subtract 3 from each side. So I have 3x equals 45, and divide that by 3. And that gets us 15, which is A. Number 2, it says, in the basketball game, Rachel scored 6 points less than twice the number of points Trina scored. Trina scored 9 points. How many points did Rachel score? So I know Trina's, which is 9, and we know it's twice the number of points of hers, so let's just multiply by 2. This one I don't really have a variable. It's equal to our variable. And then she scored 6 points less than, so then that's minus 6. That would be equals to our variable. So if I just solve this out, 18 minus 6 is 12, so G is our answer. And now for 3 through 11, it is just simply solving these, what we've been doing, couple 2 steps, but mostly 1 step equation. So 9 plus n equals negative 2. We have a positive 9, so we subtract 9 from both sides, so then we get A, 11. Number 14, we have 14 equals y minus 10. It does not matter what variable is on which side, you still isolate the variable. So I want to get rid of this 10, get this y by itself. So I have minus 10, so I do the opposite, plus 10, so that would be 24. So our answer is I. Number 5, variables on the right side again, but that does not matter. So I have a plus 3, just do minus 3, so we get 2. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Keep it balanced. Number 6, t minus 26 equals negative 21. Add a positive 26 to both sides. That will get us 5, so H. Number 7, 84 equals 7d. 7d is really saying 7 times d, so we have to do the opposite of multiply, which is divide. So if we divide both sides by 7, we get B, 12. 6z equals 12, same thing. 6 times z equals 12. So divide both sides by 6, z would equal 2, so F. And then my next one, I have x over 4 equals negative 1. Now I have the dividing the 4 on the bottom, so that as a fraction, it's really x divided by 4. So I multiply both sides by 4, so it can cancel. So that would be a negative 1. Number 10, this is a 2-stepper. So first I want to get rid of my constant. My constant is the one without a variable. So I'm looking at the variable side again, so I do plus 2 to both sides. So then I have 4/5 x equals 8. And then I need to multiply by the reciprocal. Remember, the reciprocal is just flipping it. So I would have 8 times 5 over 4. And then 5 times 8 is 40. 40 divided by 4 is 10. So my answer is I. Then finally on this page, 2/3 x equals 4. You just multiply by the reciprocal again to get that to cancel. So 4 times 3 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So then my answer is A. Now we are on page 2. Page 2, so we're starting with number 12. So we have 2 fractions here, but I'm going to look on the side with the variable. So I have 1/2 x, and you need to multiply by the variable to the both other sides. So that would be like 2 over 1. So 5 times 2 is 10. And then 10 divided by 6 would just be 10 over 6. And then when you put it in the mixed fraction, that's when you get 1 2/3. So I. So that one doesn't work out to be a whole number, but remember to simplify your answer, especially on the next pages. Now we have a 2-stepper, so I have negative 8x plus 3 equals negative 29. So I want to look on the side with my variable first, so that negative 8x plus 3, get rid of that constant, so minus 3. So I have negative 8x equals negative 32. And so you divide by negative 8. Negative divided by a negative turns into a positive, so then that's where we get positive 4, so B. And 14, I have 3x plus 1 equals negative 11. So if I subtract 1, this is another two-stepper, so I'm getting rid of my constant first. Subtract 1, I have 3x equals negative 12. Divided by 3 is negative 4, so that one's H. 15, you can take it two approaches. My favorite one is getting rid of that coefficient first before having to factor it through. So by doing that, this is multiplying. I'm going to have to multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply 6/5 by 15. So this cancels. And then if I do that, I have x plus 4 equals 18. And I just have to subtract 4, so that one is C. You also can distribute it through, but that gets a little more messy. So pick which one works for you. 16, I have 0.38 equals 6, so this is just a decimal coefficient. Coefficient's the number that comes before the variable. Just keep it simple. Same thing, so I divide by 0.3. 6 divided by 0.3 gets us 20. Remember, you can use your calculator. 17, what is the solution of x plus 6 is less than 5? Now we're doing our inequalities. You solve them the same way. So I subtract 6 to both sides, so I'm left with x is less than negative 1. And now I have, what is the solution of y over negative 2 times 3, or is less than or equal to 3? This one is where you have to be careful, because to undo this you have to multiply by a negative 2. If you multiply or divide by a negative number, then your sign switches. So I multiply both sides by negative 2, it cancels. So then instead of y is less than negative 6, less than or greater than negative 6, I'm going to have y is greater than or equal to negative 6, because my sign's going to flip. And then what is the solution of 2/3 a plus 6 is greater than 0? So this is a two-stepper, but you take it the same way. So I minus 6 to both sides, so then I have 2/3 a is greater than negative 6, and then I multiply both sides by my reciprocal. So then I have negative 18 over 2, so then a is greater than negative 9, which would be our b. Oh, I did that wrong. Sorry, that is our a, not our b. A is greater than or equal to. And then our last one on this page is, what is the graph the solution set of b minus 4 is greater than or equal to negative 1? So you needed to solve for it first. So you just add 4 to both sides. So then I have b is greater than or equal to 3. So if I'm looking at that, I know I'm going to have a closed circle in greater than going to move to the right. So it is F. Now for page 3. This one is now where you need to show your work. And you're not having multiple choice, so make sure you're simplifying if you have a fraction and being careful of your negative numbers. So for 1 and 2, pretty straightforward. So it says solve each equation, check your solution. All you do is subtract 17.3 from each side, and then you're going to get x is equal to negative 22. That's kind of a funny negative 22. Same with this one. This one is kind of a two-stepper because you're going to have a negative in front of your variable. So you're going to subtract 21.8 from each side. So then I'm going to end up with negative g equals negative 12.3. And now this is like a negative 1g, but I just want to find out what a positive g is. So then you divide by negative 1, and then you're left with g equals 12.3. So it just cancels the negative. For 3 and 4, I know we had a lot of problems with these ones. You guys are struggling with the word problems, putting them into variables, but just saying it slowly usually helps. So this one says the number of infielders on a baseball team is 1 less than 3 times the number of pitchers. If there are 11 infielders, that's kind of like my number, I know. How many pitchers are there? So then I have 1 less than 3 times, we don't know how many pitchers are, so that's going to be my variable, 3p, and 1 less than. So that is my equation. If I solve that, add 1 to both sides, 12, so 3p equals 12, divide by 3, we have 4 pitchers. Now 4, this one was a little tricky. So 3 children each had the same amount of money in their savings account. So one of the children withdrew a quarter. A quarter is also a fraction of 1/4 of her money, and spent it all on a $25 t-shirt. So we know a quarter of their money is $25. We don't know their total though, so that's our variable. So then you multiply each side by 4 over 1, so that's 100. And that's the answer I originally had. Then I had to be careful because they're saying what are the total amount of money originally in the accounts. So not just one child's account, they want all three children's account. So 100 times 3 then would be $300. But if you had 100, that is fine too. But be careful with that on the test. Solve each equation, check your solution. So 2.9a equals 11.6. You just divide by 2.9 on both sides, and a equals 4. 6, you do the same thing, you just divide by a negative 3.1, and you get negative 2.5. 7, you're doing that same process, divide by a negative 3.7, and you're going to end up with a negative 8. So this is where you need to really be careful with the negatives. 8, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal again. And when you multiply by a negative 9 over 4, you end up with negative 1 and 1/3. Number 9. We got confused on this one a little bit in our bookwork. When it has that parentheses around the negative on this side, they're only doing that so you're not confusing it with a minus 3 that's multiplying by negative 3. So you can either factor this through, go fishing, or you can just divide by negative 3 on both sides, which is what I like to do. So then it ends up as x minus 5 equals a negative 6. And then you just have to add 5 to both sides, so you know x is equal to negative 1. Number 10, subtract by a 2.3 first, then divide by 6. So then you end up with a negative 2. Number 11, this one you subtract 5.8 and then divide by a negative 2. So that one you end up with 1.1. Be careful with your negatives and positives again. Plus 7 times 4 steps for 12. So then that would equal 20. 13 through 15. I am not going to have you guys tested on this because we didn't really go over it. I'll give you the answers, but do not worry about the process of this one. So negative 1, negative 20, and negative 4 are answers. Last but not least, we have our last page. So they're starting with 16 and 17. They're saying express an equivalent equation for each equation, and I just wanted you guys to solve that. So if you solve these, you minus 9 from both sides, so then you're left with a negative 3x equals 15. Divide by a negative 3, you get x equals negative 5. This one, multiply by the reciprocal right away, so when you do that, you're left with x minus 5 equals 72. Add 5, so you have x equals 77. On your test, this is the form you're going to want to put it in, the variable equals. 18, solving these, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, same thing, so subtract 6, so then I have y is greater than 14. I'm going to have an open circle on 14, because it's not equal to, and greater than, so bigger numbers. Add 11, so then to both sides, so I have w is less than or equal to 14. So this one I'm going to have a closed circle because it includes 14, and that's moving to my left. Number 20 says 5k is greater than or equal to negative 45. So to get to the variable alone, you're going to divide both sides by 5. So k is greater than or equal to 9. So we have k is greater than or equal to 9, so negative 9, I'm sorry about that because it's minus, so then you have negative 9, it includes it, so that's where you have your circle closed, and it's greater than, so numbers bigger than negative 9, which gets us closer to 0. This one you have to be careful, you're dividing by a negative number, so you have q is greater than negative 2 divided by negative 34, which is going to turn positive 17. So that's our answer. Q is greater than 17 because I had to do a sign change. So my circle is open and moving to the right again. This one, again, you're multiplying by a negative number. So my sign's going to switch from a greater than to a less than. So negative 7, so it stays open, and then less than, moving to the left. And finally, they're throwing in a 2-step for the last problem. So you're going to minus 5 from both sides. So I'm going to be left with b over 3 is less than or equal to a negative 3. Then you multiply both sides by 3. And so we're going to be b is less than or equal to a negative 9. So my circle is going to be closed since it includes negative 9, and it's saying less than. So my arrow is going to the left. And that completes your Pracky.